The following is a local resident producer's program. The program content is the sole responsibility of the producer and does not necessarily reflect the views or policies of Oshkosh Media, the City of Oshkosh, or Time Warner Cable.
Hentz here. Welcome to another edition of Eye on Oshkosh. Very pleased to have you with us on this episode. I'm pleased to welcome as co-host this evening Dr. Miles Maguire. He is a journalism professor from the University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh, and he'll be joining us for this particular show and talking with me to our guest, who is a familiar face, Oshkosh Mayor Steve Cummings. And we appreciate you being here.
Well, thank you for having me.
Appreciate you being here
Great
as well.
to be here. Yep.
We have tried to do this show a number of times over the course of the last 4 to 6 weeks, and there's always been something that has come up, and what can I say, life happens. And speaking of life, I'm wearing as close as I could get on short notice to purple in honor of Prince's death today, April 21st, 2016, but I do have a purple pen, so that counts. Anyway, welcome. It
Thank
seems
you.
like a long
Thank
time
you.
since you've been here, Mayor.
Probably 5 or 6 years. When I first
It hasn't
ran,
been that long,
I
has
think
it?
when I first ran for council,
Wow.
and a lot has happened in 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, well, we don't have time to recap all that tonight, but I didn't think it had been that long,
I think it
actually.
has. I think it has.
Huh. Okay, well, we're glad you're here.
I'm glad to be here.
So, and we've got a lot of things to talk about, but I wanted to start with, now, I just mentioned at the outset that we are taping this on April 21st. Just 2 nights ago, the new council was seated.
Correct.
3 new members. We had, Caroline Pansky, who was an incumbent, and Steve Herman, who was an incumbent,
Right.
and a newly seated member, her first time, Lori Palmieri,
Correct.
who is the wife of a former council member, Tony Palmieri.
Correct.
So the linkage is
They're there.
gets kind of muddy. But, whenever you guys have new council members that get seated, you always look at new rules that particular council might want to put into place. Was there anything that you guys did Tuesday night that is new for the public?
Well, we do our reorganization meeting at noon on Tuesday, and that was a fairly short 20-minute meeting. We did not look at the rules. We said, for the new people, take a week to look at it. What would you like to change? They seem to have been running well for the last, 5 or 6 years. We've got a very well-oiled machine. I mean, we come there, it's a very professional meeting. It's very civil. Everyone is very prepared. We treat it as, it's a business meeting. I mean, and I think the reason we've had my son who said, your ratings are falling, Dad. I said, what do you mean? Well, there's nothing to watch. You just come there, it's a business meeting. It's not fun anymore to watch.
Yeah.
So that's what we're supposed to do. But I think what makes it go so efficiently and civil is we have a strategic plan, and we will be updating that plan starting July 14th, and this will be our 3rd cycle. And I think the entire council and all of the city departments are in the planning session, and so everyone buys into it. Everyone knows their role in executing the plan. When we talk about our healthy neighborhoods, everyone, including engineering, the police department, fire department, everyone understands the role they have in our healthy neighborhoods. The other part of that is we spend enormous hours on the budget. And once that's approved, and when it comes to the council meeting, A lot of the agenda is officially approving things we've agreed to.
Right.
You know, if we're buying a truck, well, we agreed to that expense in November. And you know, I think that's the time the debate should happen, is during all those sessions, and you know, really work out what we want to do. But we've been very consistent in the strategic plan. I think everyone's noticed that. It's and we have these.
There they
The
are.
type is too tight, too small for me. That's why I've got large notes. But
Well, tell folks what that is.
this is a small roadmap that explains the city's strategic plan. There are 5 areas. Number 1 has been, and probably will continue to be, strengthen our neighborhoods. Next is improve the quality of life assets. 3rd is support economic development. 4th, improve and maintain our infrastructure, which we've been doing very aggressively. And the 5th is develop an effective and high-performing government. And they're so interconnected, you can't have one without the other. With economic development,
see that?
with economic development, if we don't have strong, healthy neighborhoods, people aren't going to stay in Oshkosh or come to Oshkosh.
Right.
We've been working closely now with the school district. We're having quarterly meetings. We get together more often. Realizing the role that a school district plays in the community. And from the perspective of a realtor, someone coming to the city, the first question we're asked, if they have kids, what about
What
the
are the
schools?
schools? Right.
Or they've done their homework ahead of time and say, all right, we want our kids to go to this school, now let's look for houses.
Sure.
And that is, I've been very supportive of the referendum. I was very supportive of Oaklawn. I mean, that is a critical component in the health of the city, and it's moving forward.
So one of the things that was in the budget that was approved and is part of the strengthening the neighborhoods is this housing registry plan.
Yes.
Can you tell us what the status of that is, how that's coming along?
Yes. Glad you asked that. I asked.
Is that the rental inspection?
Rental
Right.
inspection and certification.
Right.
And that's something, when I first ran, that was something I was pushing. I was talking, if you recall, we need zoning that's compatible with the age of our neighborhoods. And we need the standards that are compatible with the age of the neighborhoods. For example, I grew up a block from here on Parkway. Those homes were built before there were cars. At a certain point, somebody got a car. Oh, we need a garage. And we can't have codes and standards that fit that, and also a Menominee Drive for everything is basically a ranch with a 2-car garage. The reason I got really involved in that, when I first got into real estate, going to the older neighborhood, I'd walk into a house where a childhood friend grew up. It's like, what happened to Tommy's house? It's like, and you look at this, and more you get into and realize that these are beautiful homes, most built before, that's probably World War I, and they're just deteriorating and deteriorating. And as I look at that, you scratch your head. But then we started to form the neighborhood associations, and their basic comment was, what's dragging the neighborhood down is poorly maintained property. Not always rental, but that's the bulk of it is rental.
Right.
And by that, not necessarily a place built as an apartment, but it's the traditional house that we all grew up in. You had 3 rooms downstairs, 3 rooms upstairs, a
Right.
bathroom. Somebody said, let's put a kitchen in this bathroom. I've got a 2-family. And that started the decline of the older neighborhoods. My example is my mother lived in the same house on Parkway for 40 years, and it was a nice neighborhood when we moved there as kids. And big oak trees, and there were a lot of duplexes, but owner occupied. But as that changed, it was going down and downhill. And one day my sister and I said, my mother was a widow, you're out of here. And we just moved her. And we were happy to get whatever she could get for the house. She had the resources that it wasn't catastrophic, but you think of the number of people who think, we've saved all of our lives, we've been frugal, we own our home, and now what we thought was our nest egg is not what we thought it would be. So I think as we looked at that aspect, what was happening to neighborhoods, and the big migration really out of the older section began in the 30s with the building of West Haven. But as the neighborhoods began to decline, people were fleeing from these neighborhoods and leaving behind really nice homes. And the comments about the neighbors saying a lot of the rental property, and you just have to go in some of these. I get into a lot of them as a realtor, and there's some that do somewhat, you wouldn't want your family there.
Right.
And we looked at a house that today is a possible purchase and rehab for the city, converting it back to a single family. And it was code violations from here to the Fox River. And you knew there were kids there because there were Legos on the floor. But in the backyards there were mattresses rotting and garbage.
Oh my.
Yeah, I think everyone, I don't care what your rental is, you deserve a clean and a safe environment. And so we began this program quite a few years ago. We're basing it on what La Crosse did, Wausau, and most of the university cities have rental programs.
Right.
But then there was an Assembly Bill 568 that would prohibit communities from doing a rental inspection and certification program. They threw in other things, sort of like making chili. Let's throw in something about you can't have a historic district without it, on and on. And I went down a few times and testified and said, you know, the authors of this bill, you're close to being unethical. You own rental property. You shouldn't be authoring a bill like that.
Right.
And they did modify the bill, so it's workable for us, so we're working around it. To answer your question, we should have an ordinance place, I'm hoping, by the end of this year. We've gathered together a group of stakeholders, including people who own rental property. We've had the fire chief there, and he has some very compelling reasons about some of these, you know, that people, the landlord doesn't pay for the utilities, people start using space heaters, there's kids, there's, you know, obviously the police department, some of these areas, it's costing the taxpayer a lot of money because of a lot of calls. And the one thing we've been really preaching is equity protection. You know, once the property adjacent to you across the street starts to go downhill,
Right.
your property goes down, and it can go down rapidly.
And I know one place where that's happening is that area just to the east of the university campus, where in the last 15 or 16 years there's been a pretty large transformation from owner-occupied to rental. And so, you know, it's kind of ironic that students spend a lot of money for properties, you know, they rent, and but the quality of the housing is going down, at least what you can see from the outside. We assume that there are code violations, but you can't get in there, right?
You can't get in there, and you know, the kids are paying a lot of money, and for most of these students, it's their first time signing a legal document or a contract. A lot of them do it without mom and dad their help. On the other hand, as you look at it, and it's not just the university. It's, you know, if you have older parents that want to downsize and are looking for a rental, you know, I would like some assurance that where I'm helping my mother go is clean and safe, and if something goes wrong, the landlord is there to fix it right away. I don't have to run over and fix it.
So exactly what will this inspection and certification program do, Steve?
I think that what it's going to do, it's going to...
I mean, what are you going to require of landlords? Maybe I should phrase it that way. What do they have to do to get a certificate?
There'll be an inspection. That's the part we're wrestling with. We're working with other communities that have done something. How do you do it? We don't want to penalize the good landlords. So if you've built a new apartment building, it's inspected, you won't see us in 10 years. We're trying to come up with some type of a system, and that's the planning departments. They're wrestling with that. They're wrestling with the cost. If you've got a bad property and we're there, you will be given a citation, X amount of time to fix it. If not, we'll be back, and there'll be a fine that keeps going up and up and up.
But we already have that, really.
We really don't. We have
we really do. I was a landlord for 20 years.
Yeah, we can't just walk into your house.
No, but if a tenant, Steve, if they're upset about something, and thankfully I was a good landlord, I never had anyone call on me, but I do know of some landlords who their tenant would get upset, they'd call the city, and once the city's in your house, they can look at everything.
That's right.
So you'd get them that way. And I mean, this is probably a good thing, but to me it just seems like it's more legislation on top of legislation that's not really being enforced.
It's going to be enforced. That's one of the problems. We don't have a lot of people in inspections. The tenant does have to make the complaint, a lot of the students are afraid to call.
Afraid to do it. Yeah.
We've got the stakeholder group, we've got the attorney from the university too. You get older people, I'll use my mother as an example again. We moved her to a very nice apartment down the street from us. She's 99 now, so when she was 95, she wasn't getting a lot of heat in December. And I knew the landlord, so I called the landlord and I explained. He said, yeah, we'll have somebody there. Second call, yeah, we'll have somebody there. Third call, we'll have somebody there. And it kept getting, it was into the 50s, so I finally called Andrew Pritt Inspections. I said, hey, can you come over here right away? This is serious. Well, by the time he got there and was finished, and this was a very nice apartment building that was built, there was about $25,000 in repairs. Now, had she not, like a lot of older people, not had a family member or friend to call,
To make the
help
call.
me out,
Right.
she's going to sit there and is going to sit there and
No,
freeze to death.
I understand that part of it. So from that standpoint, this is a good thing.
It's a good thing.
You know, and I would be the first to admit that. But it just, you know, if you don't have enough people to go out and check on things now, where are additional people going to come from to mandatorily or automatically go out and inspect properties?
There will be a fee, which will allow us to hire more inspectors.
Okay. How many
Again,
more inspectors do you
We
think?
don't know because we're wrestling with, there's 13,000 rental units in the city.
No, that's a lot.
We're wrestling with, if it's an 8-unit, do we charge for each unit or are you charged by the building? That's the thing they're really struggling with it. How to make it fair and equitable. And if there's a fee, say $5 for, don't quote me, but if there's a fee,
Right.
$5, I'm quite certain the landlord will add it to the rent. But
Right.
everyone's going to do the same thing, so the playing field stays equal. And it's going to force the really bad ones to make some repairs, if not get out of the business. I mean,
Well, I know of 3 or 4 alone that their tenants have called me because of my rental history and said, what can I do? And I've said, call the city and report them. And I think in one case they did, but I think in the other cases, like you said, they were afraid to. People don't realize that your landlord cannot evict you because you've reported them for some kind of a violation. You know,
well, I think there's that fear. Now, there's some rental companies in the city that I've listened to their explanation to a potential tenant is, here's your responsibilities. Here's what you have to do. And if there's a problem, here's who you call to place a work order for repair. And those are very well-maintained properties. Now, on the other hand, we all know tenants can be destructive too.
Sure.
And
Especially college students.
I wasn't going to pick strictly on college, but a friend of mine from the Illinois area, his niece was going to school here, and she was moving into a house, rental property. And I said, well, I'll come over and help you. I'll just be nosy. I carried one small box. But she was on the 3rd floor, which, when I was a kid in my grandparents' house, that was the attic. And their attic had glass in the windows. This had no glass to some of the windows. Going up, it was the bit of the railing there was wiggly. Had there been a fire, there's no way out. Absolutely no way out of this thing. And she rented it without her parents' knowledge. The parents were up here, and I thought they were going to have a heart attack. I mean, just like, it wasn't a money issue at all. It was not money at all. It was, how could you do this?
Right.
could I offer a suggestion? I think that also in conjunction with this inspection and certification program, I think far too many landlords don't know the law.
I would agree.
You know, you commented that it's a well-maintained property and well-run when someone says, here's who you call, blah, blah. Do you know that that's actually a law? In landlord-tenant law, you must, if you are following Wisconsin consumer protection laws,
right.
you must provide them with a person and an address or a phone number of who they should call for work that needs to be done or emergencies. And it's interesting that you say that, because that suggests to me that a lot of landlords aren't even doing that.
Probably not. I looked at this girl's, her lease, and I said, have you met your landlord? Well, no. I said, is he going to clean up all the beer cans from the previous tenants underneath the porch? Well, I don't know. But I also watch these kids trying to get a oversized sofa in the front door, and they just
Yeah, yeah.
you could hear the wood splintering. So it's education on both sides.
Well, and that's why I think, a landlord-tenant course might be good.
Those have been offered. That's part of this whole program. We're not just going to say we're going to inspect your property.
Yeah, I
There's
think
education
I think
on
that's
both
good
sides.
because for the life of me, there are still landlords out there who try and charge tenants for carpet cleaning, and as of I think it was January 1st, 1999, a landlord cannot. It is illegal to deduct for carpet cleaning, and
that
unless
right?
yes,
That's interesting.
unless it is beyond normal wear and tear, or if they have a separate kind of agreement called a non-standard rental provision. So see all these little things.
I bet the students don't know that.
They wouldn't know that, sure. I mean, as you said, it's their first time out.
First contract.
It's the first
That's-
contract they've signed.
Yeah, and
they're-
that's why it's important
And they're
that
doing it on their own, and so
everybody
they don't
know
want
these
mom and
things.
dad to look at it
They want
because
this independence.
they're doing this,
Yeah.
sure.
Well, I told this girl, I said, stand in the middle of all the rooms with your camera, which is what your insurance agent does for your home.
Mm-hmm.
So you have a record of all your content. Just go in a circle and make notes if the carpet's bad or if the broken window, then when it comes time when you do leave, you've got documentation that it was like this when you moved and this was not you. But I think the students better than I do. I think a lot of the kids are just, I graduated, I'm out of here, keep my deposit.
Right.
I'm on to greener pastures.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes it's even worse than that. I mean, sometimes they actually have damages that they want to collect and things like that. But you're right. They're once they graduate, they want to move on with their lives, and a lot of them are not here.
Well, the other comment we hear from the students, and I don't mean to pick on students, but Oshkosh is kind of a crummy, crappy town. Well, they don't see much beyond the campus or off-campus housing. They never wander down to a Menominee Park or a South Park or even downtown or Main Street, the library. So that their world is just the campus, and that's their parents too. They come to town, and this is really kind of a.
well, they may be getting that idea from the condition of a lot of our streets too.
Yeah.
That doesn't really send the best message that we're taking care of things.
And as you say, I mean, a lot of that housing stock has better value to it if it had been maintained, and that just hasn't happened.
I was at a East Central Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission meeting yesterday in Menasha, and we were kind of sharing with people from Fond du Lac and Appleton and so forth, sharing different things we're doing, and I started to talk about this program, and the whole group perked up. You've got Lawrence and Appleton, and one gal said, well, Lawrence does. I said, Lawrence can do that because they're private. We're public here. But the amount of interest in what these cities, we're all about the same age. We're all built pretty much on the same river. You drop me down in Appleton or Fond du Lac or in an old neighborhood, they all look like. You can't tell. I said, we're all facing the same thing. And there's groups getting together now to really look at neighborhoods in the whole Fox Valley. So there's a consortium. So
Sure.
Interesting.
Want to talk about some other things. One of the things, the council does seem to be running like a smooth, well-oiled machine. There have been very few people in the last election cycles that have stepped up to run. I'm not really sure why that is. I wish that had been the case when I ran 10 years ago, but I ran on
my first time.
I ran on a slate, and I think this is probably the biggest number of people who ever ran. I think there were either 19 or 21 people who ran back in April of 2005, and I mean that's a lot of people
Yeah,
to
that
try
was
and
crazy.
conduct a debate with, and I've never seen anything since then. And in these last two elections, other than incumbents, there's been one person who ran. What about for like the city boards and commissions? Are you seeing more
Gee, that's
people?
number 29.
Are you seeing more people, submitting applications to serve?
No, we're not, and I have made public service announcements on this. I've made comments at the council meeting. The boards and commissions really do a lot of the legwork for us, and when it comes to us, it's pretty much all the hard lifting has been done. And if there's a plan commission recommendation, as a rule, the logic is behind it. We don't always agree. I have asked repeatedly, and we get a trickling here, a trickling there, and what I've said, come to a meeting and see if you have an interest in the subject matter, be it the Parks Department or the Plan Commission or whatever, and if you like it, fill out an application. There are times that we run dangerously low of quorum. But I think, people should step up and serve their community in these capacities. And if they have an interest in running for a council seat, at least you've got an idea of how the city somewhat operates. I mean,
Yep.
my first year in council, it takes a good year to really figure out how it all does come together and work and so forth.
Sure.
Whatever you can do, I mean, I'll make a plea right now. I mean, it's mostly once a month or a couple of hours.
Are there any boards in particular that have quorum issues, that have multiple openings?
Sustainability does at times. Housing Authority does at times. And what we've been holding quarterly meetings with all of the boards, the chairs of the boards, saying, what can we do different? If you want to change hours, talk with your board. Well, you can change hours. You can change days. I've encouraged all the chairs to do a public service, and I'm explaining, what does a plan commission do? I mean, it sounds like you plan. Well, what do you plan? What does landmarks do? So it's an education for the public, saying, if you have an interest, if you have an interest in history and preservation, we've got a place for you.
Well, and I can personally speak to that because I served 10 years on the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Right.
And I've served on landmarks until its meeting time started to conflict with zoning appeals, and then I had to make a choice. I've been on historic preservation. I was on the Grand Opera House. I served on a number of things, and it really, you're right, it really does not take up that much time.
It doesn't.
A couple hours a month, perhaps, of really reading the material that they send out and looking it over, and a couple hours or so a month of actual meeting time.
Landmarks, for example, it's 2 hours. It's three to five as a rule. Sometimes we go because we start to just talk. It's 3 to 5. It's a good group. We're doing a lot of things, and I've been I've been lucky to solicit some donors to do some of the things we're doing that we don't have city funds for. We started that whole signage program along the river, talking the history. That's all been public or private money that I've gone after. The foundation did one. CNN Railroad gave us money to do 2, but it's making a big difference on the Riverwalk. I mean, it's fun to walk in the Riverwalk, but you want to stop and do
Sure.
it. And a great place to do that is Augusta, Georgia. I mean, but they spent millions of dollars. We don't have millions of dollars, but Landmarks is doing a lot of things. And can I do a plug?
Of course.
Well, we began a program, a historic plaque program. And this is the one that we did. This is our sample for City Hall.
Okay.
And my house qualifies. I just ordered one. We started with Main Street. We've got a lot of homes now that are getting the plaque. And you don't have to have a big. Everyone thinks historic how they think big. Bungalows on North Main Street are historic. I've got a Greek Revival. That's a small farmhouse. It's historic. But we're working with the bid board and the downtown to get this on there as part of a really historic tourism program. I mean, if you've been to a Savannah or a Charleston, Madison, Georgia, little town that just does great stuff, it's a way to generate tourism into a community. And those people, as a rule, spend more money. They spend a couple days in the city, that type of thing.
So what does a homeowner who wants to have one of those plaques have to do, and how much does it cost?
$225. I've got the application form
Okay,
with
great.
me. It's $225. We will do the city staff. David Buck does all the research, and you just give him or us a check, and it's ordered, and we'll do a little presentation if convenient. The first one to do it was Oblio's on Main Street, and Todd and Mark understand the value of the tourism. And what's been nice for them, it says Schlitz Beer Hall 1884, and they've got the Schlitz sign. And talking to Todd, he said a lot of people just stop, have their picture taken with this and the Schlitz, and then go and have a beer. So it generates a lot of income in the city. And we've been working closely with the Convention and Visitors Bureau and the library and the museum and some others to start it in the central city, because that's where the most historic buildings are. We've got the Episcopal Church, the Presbyterian Church, the Congregational Church, the homes. We've got the library. So it's a nice clustering. So it makes nice walking tours or biking tours. But cities that really promote their history, they're onto a way to generate new income for the community.
True. Okay. Oh, one other thing I just wanted to mention for folks. In the reorganizational meeting, Deb Allison Osby was elected or selected or voted, whatever you want to call it, as deputy mayor. And that's a 2-year term, or is that a 1-year term?
It's 1 year term.
1 year. Okay. And your term as mayor is up in 2017, is it?
16. I've served 1 year.
Okay. So
Will you serve till next year?
Till 2017, yeah.
Okay, all right.
And if I'm reelected, then I do another 2-year term.
Great, gotcha.
Sounds like you're already planning on running.
I have the signs in my garage.
Okay, just recycle them, right? Want to talk about something that is pretty serious. Last November, I believe it was, the City Council gave City Manager Mark Roloff a directive to plan for in 2016 to make one of his priorities, one of his goals, looking at a diversity coordinator, diversity and inclusion coordinator, whatever you want to call it. How are things coming along with that?
He gave us an update last Tuesday, and he said they're contacting other communities, and the problem they've run into and they've solved is the term isn't consistent. It's all over the place.
Term?
The term.
Okay.
Some cities may call it diversity coordinator, some just call it part of HR.
Oh, okay.
So he said that kind of slowed them down. So they're in the process now of finding out, really defining what that regardless of the title, what that position does, and what that position costs. So that was the one goal we gave him, and we have no doubt he's doing his job. The other was looking at a municipal court, which goes back to this rental registration program. Right now, the frustration with our people in inspections is they spend a lot of time on some of this. They go to court, and the judges here just kind of blow it off. We've got more important things. So the taxpayer spent a lot of money on Andrew's work, and it never goes anywhere. And a lot of these people, they know how to run this. They know how to work the system. With a municipal court, you don't. There's no system work here, and we get the money. And and again, we're checking with other communities. La Crosse has one. With other communities, how do you structure it? How do you all that stuff? And
the town of Menasha has one.
So is that something that you think that maybe by the end of the year there'll be an ordinance?
We'd like to. We'd like to. Usually these goals mark their annual goals, and so far he always comes through on the goals. But we think these are two very critical things, and we're not going to rush them. I mean, they both take a lot of time, and money is tight. I mean, we got to.
Because you'd have to hire judges, and there'd be a lot of startup costs.
To my knowledge, judges run. So, So we can't say.
Right, but you have to pay them. You have
to pay them, but the person has to run for that position.
That's what I meant.
And it's not a hugely. I mean, you're not getting paid a ton of money.
You're not working 5 days a week. But
Yeah, it's not a full-time.
We feel we need we've got all these. We need teeth in this stuff, and that's a way to do it.
Yeah.
Kind of not bouncing around, but the inspections department. If there's a fire and a property burns down, it happened a couple of years ago on Franklin and Ida. It took Andrew a day and a half to track down the owners because of the LLCs. Now there's a day and a half he wasted taxpayers' dollars and found, it's an attorney in Boston. Why would that makes no sense to me.
Yeah.
But they were very cooperative. They took it down. They did what they had to do. With the registration part of it, we will have a contact. If there's a fire, we know who to call. If the front porch is filled with garbage and there are traditional sofas and TVs, we know who to call to get it cleaned up. And again, if that house is next to yours and it's not cleaned up, your value is going to go down very rapidly.
Sure.
Well, I mean, in the past, and I'm sure it's what you're still doing, you just simply, there's property taxpayers who pay the property taxes. And, if there's a sofa sitting on the couch, I know that you guys just go out, take a picture, and send them a citation in the mail. Or a correction notice. I think it's a 5-day correction notice. They get the picture of the item, and that's in dispute, and then they have to correct it, or they'll face a fine. So I don't know that this is going to necessarily help with that, but I want to go back.
It says we're serious. It says we're not. This is no longer lip service. We are very serious about.
But the city already does it now.
But as I said before, it gets to court and it gets thrown out.
Yeah.
This way, it'll get to court and it won't get thrown out. It's either you fix the mess, or and then the meter keeps running. If you've got 5 days and you don't do it, and X days, the meter keeps running. And I think the bottom line is, being very financial in this area, it's the overall assessed value of the city too, which has a tremendous impact on our ability to borrow, how Moody's looks at us. There are cities, Detroit's a prime example, that let their property values do this, and they went bankrupt. Well, there are a lot of cities in California. If that goes on long enough, you're going to end up bankrupt.
Right.
And then the equity in your home, who's going to buy your home?
Yeah. I want to go back to the diversity coordinator thing. I think some people in the public, myself certainly included, are not really sure how serious the council is about creating this kind of a position. I personally believe it's very needed. The city of Appleton has had theirs since 1997. So that's going back a lot of years. Talking about 17 years there. But one of the things is you had made some comments, and I'm going to bring them up because they were said twice publicly. Once right after the Martin Luther King event in January, and then the next time was at a joint school board and council workshop the following week. And your comment was talking about some comments that you were referring to your comments at the MLK event.
Right.
And you said the biggest thing I left with them, because there was a meeting after the event.
Right.
And you said the biggest thing I left with them was they've got to really understand this community, the history, the culture of this community before they go forward with something we have to do. They've got to realize that that's a real obstacle in mindset. And I can see, and then you looked at the audience, and I can see some of the townies shaking their heads. What did you mean by they, first of all? Who were you referring to?
The people in Oshkosh. I mean, how long did it get us to get a new Oak Lawn school? There's this mindset in the community that's, we like to say frugal. I'll use the term cheap. That's why we have schools in the shape they are, the streets the shape they are. People were afraid. They didn't want to spend money. And it's hard to get people in this community to change. And my comment, the people in the audience were two of the administrators from the school district who grew up here, and they were shaking their head knowing what I meant by it's hard for them, these referendums. It's just hard to get people to move off of center. That's what I meant. I was just saying, we've lived here. We know it's, my example is go to an Oblio's on Main Street or a Peabody's and go to Players on the south side and ask the same question and get two totally different answers. We're still struggling, and I've tried to explain that, we're still struggling a bit with this north-south issue. I mean, come on. And that's what I'm saying. People are still living in the past of a woodworker strike that took place in the 1890s.
Yep.
It's like, let's move forward. There's a lot of cool stuff happening in the city. Get with the program but my point was, you've got to understand, this is an obstacle. There are people who just will not change in this community. I mean,
well, then too bad for them. But, I mean, there's just like in your neighborhood, Miles, you guys didn't need sidewalks.
Right. We have them.
And didn't want sidewalks. But the city council just said, by God, you're going to have sidewalks because we have a sidewalk program, and this is for the good of pedestrians and so forth.
Or something.
And yeah,
it's going to happen in my neighborhood next year.
And so sidewalks were put in. So here we've got an opportunity, once things get ironed out, to create a position that will benefit not only the city and the school district, but, corporate America or corporate Oshkosh. And, I think it's, okay, some people may say we can't afford to do it. Well, on the other hand, I don't personally see how we can't afford to do it. You know, we're in 2016. If this gets approved in 2016, it would probably start in 2017 or something like that. And, you know, our world is becoming more and more diverse every single day.
Well, it is.
And we've got to embrace cultures, sexual identities, sexual orientation, faiths, you know, ethnicities, race. We've got to embrace all of that and find a way to all move together forward as a community where we can get more done working together.
I fully agree with that.
And so if some people in the city don't like that, then, you know, I think the council has to just have the same mindset that they did with sidewalks or anything else and just say, sorry, we hear what you're saying. We don't happen to think that your mindset is what's best for the city, and we're doing this. I mean, why do we have to acquiesce to their ignorance?
I wouldn't call them ignorant. They're not ignorant.
Well, if they don't understand why this is important, then I'm sorry. I do think that they're ignorant.
It's education. It's the same thing with the referendums.
Well, that's what being ignorant means.
It's education. But they're not ignorant.
Well, yes, they don't understand. They don't know.
That doesn't make them ignorant. No one's explained to them
All right,
why there's this
I'm not going to
need.
debate the issues of ignorance with you, Steve. All I'm saying is you guys move forward with things when you want to do it. And if this is something that the city feels they need to move forward with doing, then you have to just say, you know what, I'm sorry. We disagree. We're moving forward with this.
Well, we'll have to wait and see what comes from the study that Mount Corolla is doing.
Well, hopefully...
We don't really know what the position does.
Well...
We all have assumptions of what the position does by the terminology. We don't know what it does. We don't know what it costs. What does this position do? And that's why we're talking to different communities. What does this position do in your community? Is it a city function? Is it a school district function? Is it a university? Is it all three? Is it a county?
Well, the university has their own very good
We're
inclusion.
pretty active in that, yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm meeting with Sylvia, I think, next week to find out
Sylvia Carey Butler from the university.
exactly what she does. Because this is new to us. I mean,
So do you think there's a sense on the council that there's a need for some kind of position? It's a
there's
matter
a need
of
for
defining.
some sort of a position, but what that position is, I in the real estate world, there's a lot of rules that we have to follow and so forth. And if we're asked questions about who lives next door, we can't say. It's like, if you want to find out, if we're asked questions, are the kids in the neighborhood? We can't tell them. All I usually say is, if you see big wheels, if you see walkers, draw your own conclusion. So I don't know if that's a good analogy, but we have to really know what this position does do. I know Mark is meeting with the coordinator in Appleton.
Kathy Flores.
Did last week or this week.
Yeah, I mean, and just a little history for viewers on their position. It started in the police department in 1997 to proactively address issues in the community that affected diverse populations. And then in 2006, it moved to the mayor's office, and it's currently in the Community and Economic Development office because it is so closely tied to economic development, which is one of the goals of your strategic plan. So I think we should do it, Steve.
We'll find out. I'm not going to, until I wouldn't hire anybody until I really knew what they're going to do and what they're going to cost me and their credentials.
Understood. But, sometimes we can't afford other things, as a city, but we have to do them. And I think that this is something that probably is going to have to be done. If this city wants to grow, and maybe some people don't want it to grow. Maybe some people don't want it to grow. But we need to drag ourselves into, the year 2016 and beyond. So you're looking into it. Mark's looking into it. Do you expect to make a decision on this sometime this year yet?
Yeah,
Okay.
because it's a 2016 goal, as the municipal court is.
Okay.
And with the direction to Mark is, if we're going to do it, we want to take the lead in this. We don't want to be following what an Appleton does. I'm kind of tired of hearing about Appleton, first of all. It's not the be-all, it's not, the center
Well,
of the
no,
universe.
but there are some things that they are doing right, just like there are other things that other communities are doing right. And I don't think that we should act so self-righteous as a city to say, you know what, we're not going to learn from them, or we're not going to learn from them. I think we can, learn from other people who are doing things and doing them well.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I have a question, a little more nitty-gritty. Kind of a funny thing happened on my street last winter, which was that one of our snow plows got stuck. And my neighbors came out and we were sympathizing with the driver, and one of the things that was noticed was that the tires were kind of bald. I was walking my dog one day last week and I saw one of our garbage trucks broken down on Algoma Boulevard. And maybe they're completely random, unrelated events, but I'm just wondering, with tight budgets, are we deferring maintenance? Are there problems?
We shouldn't be. Hence the central garage. That
Right.
we can do more of the maintenance ourselves. We can do it quicker. And there's, I don't know how they rotate. I mean,
Right.
rotate tires, but there's some method to their madness.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if it was just maybe a pick on your street.
I don't know.
You mentioned dogs.
Yes.
Is there any more of a movement toward having dogs in city parks, or in a couple city parks, or along the Riverwalk, or anything like that?
We have not had a lot of discussion on that. When I was in Menasha yesterday at the East Central Wisconsin, that was a subject matter in these different cities. I'm a dog owner. And being lazy, I just fenced my yard in. So in the winter, I just opened the door and out they go. But they run. It's a huge yard.
Mm-hmm.
I live on a street where there's a ton of dog walkers and joggers, and my den's in the front of the house. So in the morning, I'm doing, and I don't. Maybe once in a while, someone doesn't pick up. Personally, I would like to see some sort of a pilot program. I mean, we're spending a lot of money on all the trails and so forth, the Riverwalk. I mean, I've been in Europe. I mean, dogs all over the place. That was my first shock in Paris, going into a restaurant. My God, there's dogs all over. You can't have a dog in here.
And it's happening in more U.S. cities, too.
Right. There's always going to be people who don't take care of anything. Their dog, their home, their kids. It's the fact of life. I would like to see a pilot program. And which park, where, I don't know, but you've all been to different things like fisheries and at Menominee Park, and we used to do our group did the beer tent for the Otter Street Fishery, and as a fundraiser, and there was always a lot of dogs there, a lot of puppies.
That's right.
Aren't the puppies cute? You're going to have the vicious dog every so often. I'd like to see at least a pilot, not the whole city. You're an animal lover.
Very much so, yeah. And we, too, have a fenced-in backyard, but, it would be nice when you go walking on a trail or whatever to be able to take your dog or dogs with you. I think back to when the Oshkosh Area Humane Society would have their shelter trek. It's now called something different, but it was always in Menominee Park for years, and no incidents that I'm aware of.
No, with the fishery.
I think most people pick up after their pets, but you're right. There's always going to be one or two bad apples, but they're probably letting their dogs run around anyway.
They're probably in their house. But, we're a dog family, and my grandson is only 22 months. They have 3 dogs, and I mean, there's some labs, and they're great with him. He's great with. I mean, he knows how to. At that age, he knows you're not rough with dogs. He comes to our house with 2 dogs, and I mean, he'd rather see them than me. They're good with him, but he's raised in a dog family. Our son was raised in a dog family. My wife came from a dog family. So I think a pilot program, maybe part of the Riverwalk, see what happens. It's just a matter of responsibility, and they're responsible people, and they're very irresponsible people.
Well, and maybe a way to do that is in the places where, say, you get a pilot program put in place. In those places, maybe put up, like they have at the county dog park, a couple little things with some bags in them along the little path or whatever. I mean, we always take bags.
Well, that's what your grocery store bags are for.
Yes.
Get them out from underneath the kitchen
Well,
counter.
and there's actually a retractable leash that actually
Right.
has a little cylindrical thing in as part of the leash. And that works really well because your bags are always right there.
So I'm just curious because I'm not from here originally. Is this a historical animosity towards dogs? Was there some point when dogs were allowed in parks and then the city decided
I don't think
to
they
die?
ever were.
I don't honestly know.
Yeah, I don't know that they ever really were. But you see communities all over the country. See, I'm looking elsewhere again, Steve. But
There's been
dogs-
there's been an explosion of dog owners too. Where my mother lives, it's a 14-unit apartment. It's full of dogs now. When she first moved there 20 years ago, there were no dogs. But there's more millennials moving in, and she's fine with it. I mean, she's 99. If they bark, okay, she likes dogs. Okay.
I really think that the majority of people who are dog owners are responsible. Like I said, there's always going to be one or two bad apples, but they're probably breaking laws with respect to dogs anyway. But it would be nice if we could get a pilot program going. I think that's a really good idea, rather than making it just all or none.
Yeah, you're gonna have a real divide.
Right.
Yeah.
A real divide.
Yep. I know I did a poll some time ago on my website, and it was pretty much 50-50 as far as whether people wanted it or didn't want it. And I'm not sure, didn't the Northwestern do a poll on something like that once upon a time too, or the city or somebody? I recall seeing some kind of a poll, and it too was pretty evenly divided. But
that rings a bell.
If
I
you've
don't
got a
recall
pilot
when.
program, then that's then you've just got it in some parks, and people can walk in some parks, and people can walk with their dogs in other parks.
I live a couple houses away from Stevens Park, and I know there are people that walk their dogs in there. You go drive down Hazel or Menominee, there are people walking with a dog,
Right.
on a leash.
And there's no issues. Nobody seems to
I
be
mean, I would not walk my dogs without a leash,
right.
just in case.
But technically, walking your dog in the park is against the city ordinances.
Right.
Isn't there one park, aside from the dog park? I thought there was one park toward the west side of town where it was permissible.
I really don't know.
The one you can do it on the Weewash Trail, which is in the city,
Yep.
but was traditionally the
Yep.
county's
Yep.
responsibility. So
Well, there's the dog park at the county park, but I think we've got a bike and ped plan, which ped implies you're going to do a lot of walking, but you just can't take your dog.
Yeah. Well, and then, if I mean, this is kind of nitpicky, but there's always someone who says, well, okay, you can't have dogs in the park. What are you supposed to do if you're launching a boat and you're taking your dog? The boat launches are part of a park,
Well,
and
sawdust days, the people that come there have dogs in the park, and
see, and there's no issues,
well,
that we're aware
We
of.
question that, but you're right. There's no issues. I've never heard of
So
any dog bites or.
we're almost out of time. I want to talk, because this was on your list of things that you wanted to talk about. What's happening with the property where the old Pioneer Inn and Marina was at, or still is, but just sitting there?
Art Dumpke is negotiating with the owner. Mark Roloff and I signed a letter of support for Andy. Not a financial commitment, but support for his efforts. I met with the owner maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and it was I, Mark, and Alan Davis. And he seemed very amenable to doing something, and he was then in the process of building a shopping center in Lakeland, Florida, and a hotel in Clearwater. Well, the hotel had problems, and he sort of dropped off the radar. I keep, in my own mind, I keep wondering, is he as financially solvent as we think he is? I mean, he pays his taxes, 50 grand a year. Or is he just being a
Well, you can't say what I think you were about to say.
stubborn? I would
Yeah.
just say bullhead.
he's making money from the marina, right? So he's
He was. I mean, but that marina, that was always the moneymaker. My son years ago was the harbor master there when Bergstrom owned it. And he said, the place was gangbusters in the summer. He said, a lot of the big boats, and then they closed down the locks. He said, a lot of those big boats Chicago people, bigger cities, they'd come up here, and he said the women did not, even though they were big boats, did not want to spend the night on the boat. They'd go to the hotel. So it was very profitable in the summer, and then winter came. In the hotel, if you recall, the hotel wasn't big enough to really serve a lot of corporate functions. There was a ballroom. You couldn't break it up into enough breakout rooms.
Right.
If they were to add on, they would chew up parking, and parking was very, very sparse there. So it was kind of a catch-22. So when something comes, we're there to any way we can to assist. We just it's the owner that is.
So what is Dumpke trying to do?
Well, the first thing is the marina. That has to get cleaned up. And my son, a couple of years ago, he took Mark Roloff and Alan Davis and Andy Prick, the inspector, through there. We got as close as we could get to the building because we can't step on the land. And we took pictures. And then my son was saying, back when I was here, the water is now half the depth. It's so silted in.
Oh, really?
He said all that electrical is bad. The seawall is bad here. This is bad. So the first thing that has to be done, it has to be dredged to get more boats in there, because that's where the money was made with the boats. The issue of going up the river is dead for now. But and one thing, remember the Tiki Bar was very popular until it was closed 10 years ago. I've told Art there's a place in Door County just before Sister Bay called, I think, Fred and Fuzzy's. It's a hamburger joint and beer. The kitchen is in a tent. They have since added on a tent for indoor dining.
Wow.
But it's still burgers, but it's all tiered. There's fantastic sunsets. When it's nice out, they're open. When it rains, it's closed. And they go to Florida and do the same thing. Well, I said, you could do something like that. Do just a tent for the summer that serves burgers and beer, burgers and brats, the typical summer food, and you'd have that place would be packed. But you're not incurring the cost of a permanent brick and mortar.
Right.
Sure. See, we're getting good ideas from other cities.
That's right.
Yay. We got about a minute and a half left, Steve. Anything you want to just wrap up real quickly on?
Well, one thing, a couple of things. I put together a committee, we're just calling it quality of life. And we feel that the city has so much to offer, and we've done a poor job of marketing it. Wisconsin has done not the world's best job of marketing the state. And we put together this group. It's from the school district, the university, Tech College. There's some city staff, myself, Dave from the EAA, kind of going around the table, the Convention and Visitors Bureau, and we've sort of come to the conclusion that we're our own worst enemy. We're quick to criticize ourselves in the city. The streets. Oh my God, the streets. Well, we're fixing the streets as fast as we can get the money. So we're addressing that, and we feel that with like an Oshkosh Corp, anyone, you're bringing in people, we've got to give them something that says, when they go home to think about the job offer, here's what you just saw. Just a top-notch piece of literature with accompanying internet that's, if you go home to your spouse, you've got to see this city. I mean, the housing stock is incredible. They've got 165,000 acres of water, parks all over. If you want Chicago, 3 hours away. If you want, there is so much to offer. If you want to hunt, and I've said, let's think really this whole thing. I said we've got such a broad offering here. Everything from the Trails End for great hot dogs to the Pain, and everything in between. Great hospitals. If you're thinking about taking a job here, you have elderly parents that you may someday have to move them here. We've got world-class nursing homes.
Yeah, we got to wrap it up, Steve.
So there's so much going on now, so much positive, and it's just we want to keep the momentum going.
All right, great. And on that note, we have to be going. Thanks to both of you for being here. We
Thank
appreciate
you.
it. Thanks to the crew, and as always, thanks to you. We'll see you next time. Until then, take care. Keep your eye on us. We've got our eye on Oshkosh.